Hey guys, it's Barry again with Barry's 8-track and classic car radio repair. And you're not going to hear any music on this video. Sorry to disappoint everybody. This video is going to be about why I am so strict with my policies. And I've got a great example here of a situation that could have been catastrophic if I was not so strict with my policies. So let me get a little bit. I'll get fancy later with the camera work. For the moment, I'm just going to give you an example of why I am so strict. Here we have a work order sent by a customer, and he is stating that his radio is an AM/FM 8-track radio. Okay, now here is that customer's actual radio, and as you can see, it's clearly an AM 8-track. It does not have FM. Now, I'm sure that this was just an oversight on the customer's part, and when he gets his radio back, he's not going to be calling me and saying, hey, you sent me only an AM, and I sent you an AM/FM. I'm sure it was just a mistake on the customer's part. But if it gets more complicated, and now I can go ahead to my other view. Here I am, folks. Nope. There I am, folks. Okay. That could have been, in the case of a car restoration shop, for instance. Let's say a car restoration shop calls me wanting to send a radio in. Okay, well, it's usually the secretary who calls me, and kind of sets up the job. I frequently receive payment directly from the owner or the secretary, and then there may be a manager involved as well. There may be an assistant manager involved, and then there's also the actual mechanic who's going to pull the radio out and send it in. That's a good 5 or 6 people in the mix. That's a lot of opportunity for errors and to make mistakes. And because I require the customer to not only sign, a pretty long agreement here stating what I'm responsible for, what I'm not responsible for, things like that. For instance, do not send your knobs. I've got all the knobs I need right here. They're all pre-mounted on this cool little deal that I can get to them right away. The only thing that can happen with knobs is trouble. In the beginning, when I first started my business, I would send a customer's radio back, and he would call me and say, "Well, where's my knobs?" And I'd say, "Well, you didn't send them with the unit." "Well, yes, I did." Well, you can only imagine what that could have ended up being. I mean, it's not uncommon at all for a set of knobs to cost $50 to $100 for some rare models. So it's not a good idea to send anything that's not needed to test and repair the unit. I've got my own knobs right here to fit any model that I need them for, and this just completely prevents the possibility of anything valuable getting lost, misplaced, or misrepresented, who's in possession of what. I make it all very clear right here on the work order. The customer has to read a good 7-8 pages of terms and conditions. He has to sign it. Everything has to be in the customer's own handwriting or his own typing. And on this radio here, naturally, this may have saved my butt in a big way, because some jobs, when you figure you're sending in a potentially priceless unit, and then you're paying me up to $1,000 to either repair or do a conversion on it, everything adds up to a good $2,000-3,000 for a single job. And you can imagine what kind of trouble can happen if everything's not ironed out. Now, restoration shops are terrible about this thing. I can tell by the way they send me radios that they do a lot of stuff with a handshake. "Oh yeah, man, we'll throw it in, no problem." Well, it doesn't really work that way here. I don't do any work for free if I'm going to put a warranty on it. So that's how that goes here. In this shop, there is no room for error. There's no room for mistakes. There's no room for misunderstandings, and there's no room for arguments. And that is worth reading through 8 pages of stuff and filling out some things. So another thing is cosmetics. I've had customers send me the radio attached to half the dashboard, basically, and then I send it back. "Well, you broke my dashboard. My bezel or whatever it is that the radio is mounted to is broken." "Well, sir, you shouldn't have sent it. It's not part of the radio. It's part of the cosmetics of the car." "Yeah, well, you got to pay for it. Blah blah blah." No, that stuff doesn't happen here. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to pay for customers who don't know what to send and what not to send. It's ridiculous to send the radio attached to a huge piece of plastic. Here we got a 10-pound hunk of steel attached to a piece of plastic, bouncing around in the box. What can happen? Ha! It's going to break. Of course it's going to break. And so, no, I'm not responsible for that kind of stuff. That's just not a good thing to do. So, Sorry if I appear to rant. It is 3:30 in the morning, and I might be a little bit punch drunk. But this was a good opportunity since we did have an actual error on the customer's part in the customer's own handwriting, and it's obvious. I also require the customer to put his name on the unit or his address label, whatever it is, but it has to be done by the customer so that there's no question who put it on there. At Barry's 8-Track and Classic Car Radio Repair. My act is tight. I run a super tight ship, and I don't have any problems after I send the radio back, unless there's a warranty failure, little things like that. But as far as you sent me the wrong radio, that can't happen here. My system makes it impossible, and that is further reinforced by what I require the customer to do. So anyone who looks at my website and balks at my long list of terms and conditions, well, they're really for your protection as well as for mine. You're sending me. In the end, you're basically sending up to $2,000 or even more to a total stranger. So it's a really good idea when you're doing that to have everything in writing. Everything, every down to the finest detail has to be in writing, agreed on by both parties, by their signatures, and that's how we get jobs done here without any trouble. So I just thought I'd say that, and let me see if I can find my other use so I can close the deal. This is Barry with Barry's 8-Track and Classic Car Radio Repair, and yes, my terms are strict, but they're for a reason. They're for your protection, and they're for my protection. It's a bad deal to lose a customer because of a mistake on his part. Bottom line there, and it's just good business to get everything done, proper and everything spelled out to where there's no room for errors or misunderstandings whatsoever. And in the classic car radio industry, it is so easy for things to get mixed up and lost when you're dealing with restoration shops who have 4 or 5 people in the mix. It's just it's really it's a necessary thing that I'm really glad I did early in the game because my friends at other shops, they're always calling me and say, well, yeah, this customer did this or this customer did that, and I'd say, well, if you adopted my policies, that wouldn't have happened. So you lost a customer for no reason. You lost a customer because you did not place enough demand on that customer to give you all the information to prevent any kind of bad stuff from happening. When you make a $50 deal, sometimes you have to sign an agreement. Well, this customer paid nearly $700 to get this unit repaired, and nobody in their right mind would go into this kind of a deal without something agreed upon in writing and signed by both parties. Otherwise, there is just no end to the bad stuff that can happen. So this is Barry with Barry's 8-Track and Classic Car Radio Repair. I'll shut up now. My number is 928-533-9666. And if you've made it to this video, you probably already know what I work on, what I do, what I don't do, things like that. So I won't go all into that. My website is in the description below. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time. How do you turn this thing off? There we go.